John F. Kennedy International Airport, New York. A 16-year-old boy walks up to the Pan Am ticket counter. He's wearing a pilot's uniform, crisp, official, commanding respect. The gate agent smiles. "Good morning, Captain." "Good morning," he replies. She waves him through security. No questions asked. Here's the problem. This kid isn't a pilot. He's never flown a plane. He bought that uniform at a costume shop for $30. But over the next 5 years, he'll fly over 1 million miles for free. He'll cash $2.5 million in fake checks. He'll impersonate a doctor, a lawyer, and a college professor. All before his 21st birthday. His name is Frank Abagnale. And this is the story of the greatest con artist in American history. Most teenagers worry about passing algebra. Frank Abagnale was convincing Pan Am Airlines he was one of their pilots. He didn't come from money. He didn't have connections. He didn't even finish high school. What he had was something more dangerous, a genius-level IQ and absolutely nothing to lose. When his parents divorced and left him with nothing, Frank decided the system that failed him could be beaten. So he beat it. For 5 years, he lived like a millionaire on other people's money. He dated models, he stayed in luxury hotels, he flew around the world first class. And the craziest part? The FBI couldn't catch him. Banks couldn't stop him. Airlines didn't suspect him. Until one agent made it his life's mission to bring him down. This is Crime and Climb, the story of the teenager who conned America. Bronxville, New York. Frank Abagnale Jr. is born into what looks like the perfect American family. His father, Frank Sr., is a successful businessman. They live in a nice house. Frank goes to good schools. Life is comfortable. But underneath, everything is crumbling. Frank's father has money problems, tax problems. The IRS is investigating him. The family's wealth starts disappearing. Then comes the moment that changes everything. Frank is 14 years old when his parents sit him down and tell him they're getting divorced. But here's the cruel part. They make him choose. Right there, right then. Do you want to live with your mother or your father? Frank can't answer. He loves both of them. How do you choose? So he runs. Out of the house, down the street. He just runs, and he keeps running. At 16 years old, Frank Abagnale drops out of high school and leaves home. He's got nothing. No money, no diploma, no plan. He gets a job at a delivery company, but the pay is garbage. He's living in a tiny apartment, barely scraping by. One day he's making a delivery, and he sees an airline pilot walk through the lobby. Everyone steps aside. Everyone shows respect. The pilot doesn't wait in lines. He gets upgraded. He gets treated like royalty. And Frank thinks, that could be me. Not become a pilot. Be a pilot. At least look like one. So he goes to a costume shop and buys a Pan Am pilot's uniform. Cost him everything he had saved. Then he does something genius. He calls Pan Am's headquarters, pretends to be a pilot, and says he lost his ID badge. They mail him a new one. No questions asked. Frank Abagnale, high school dropout with 0 flight training, now has an official Pan Am pilot uniform and ID. And that's when the con begins. 1964 to 1969. Frank is 16 to 21 years old. Here's how the pilot con works. Frank would walk into airports wearing his uniform. He'd approach the ticket counter and use something called deadheading, when off-duty pilots catch free rides in the cockpit jump seat. It's a professional courtesy. Airlines do it all the time. So Frank would deadhead on flights all over the country, all over the world. Paris, London, Miami, Los Angeles. He flew over 1 million miles without paying a dime. But Frank's not just flying for free, he's using the pilot uniform for something bigger. See, in the 1960s, if you're wearing a pilot's uniform, people trust you. Banks really trust you. Frank figures out how to create fake checks. He opens bank accounts, deposits fake checks, and withdraws the cash before the banks realize the checks are worthless. It's called check kiting, and Frank becomes a master at it. Within a year, he's cashed over $40,000 in fake checks, then $100,000, then more. He's staying in five-star hotels, dating beautiful women, living like a millionaire, and he's 17 years old. But here's where Frank gets bored. The pilot thing is working too well. It's too easy. So Frank decides to level up. He sees a help-wanted ad for a pediatrician in Georgia. Frank thinks, why not? He creates a fake medical degree from Columbia University. He forges documents. He applies for the job, and he gets it. For nearly a year, Frank Abagnale worked as a supervising pediatrician in a Georgia hospital. He didn't treat patients directly. He supervised residents and handled paperwork. Nobody suspected a thing. Then he gets paranoid, quits, and moves on to his next con: lawyer. Frank moves to Louisiana, forges a Harvard law degree, passes the bar exam on his third try, and works as a lawyer for the state attorney general's office. A high school dropout, working as a lawyer for the government. By age 19, Frank has been a pilot, a doctor, and a lawyer. He's cashed over $2.5 million in fake checks across 26 countries. But there's one problem. The FBI is starting to notice, and one agent in particular is obsessed with catching him. His name is Carl Hanratty, and he's about to make Frank's life very difficult. Carl Hanratty is an FBI agent in the Financial Crimes Unit, and he's good at his job. He starts seeing a pattern. Fake Pan Am pilot checks, always the same handwriting, always moving between cities. Hanratty becomes obsessed. He studies Frank's movements, tracks his cons, gets close several times. Frank knows someone's hunting him, so he gets more careful, changes his name constantly, moves between countries. But in 1969, Frank makes a mistake. He's living in France, running the same cons. French police get a tip from an ex-girlfriend he scammed. They arrest him in a small French town. Frank Abagnale, age 21, is thrown into a French prison. And French prisons in the 1960s are brutal. Rats, disease, tiny cells. Frank loses 40 pounds in 6 months. The US wants him extradited. So does Sweden. So do multiple other countries. Frank spends time in prisons in France and Sweden before finally being extradited to the United States in 1970. He's sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. The FBI has a problem. Banks are losing millions to check fraud. They can't figure out how criminals are doing it. So Carl Hanratty, the agent who hunted Frank for years, makes Frank an offer. Work for us. Teach us how you did it. Help us catch people like you, and we'll reduce your sentence. Frank agrees. After serving less than 5 years, Frank Abagnale is released, and he starts working for the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. The con artist becomes the consultant. Here's the crazy part. Frank was really good at it. He helped the FBI understand check fraud better than anyone. He developed security features that banks still use today. He consulted for corporations on how to prevent fraud. Frank Abagnale didn't just get a second chance. He became one of the world's leading experts on fraud prevention. Today, he runs a financial fraud consultancy. He's worked with the FBI for over 40 years. He lectures at the FBI Academy. He's written books. A movie was made about his life, Catch Me If You Can, with Leonardo DiCaprio. The teenager who conned his way across the world is now helping prevent the very crimes he once committed. Frank has said, "I was a victim of my own immaturity and bad decisions, but I was given a second chance, and I've spent my life trying to earn it." He's been married to the same woman for over 40 years. He has 3 sons. He lives a quiet, legitimate life. The con artist became the good guy. So what's the lesson here? Frank Abagnale proved that intelligence without direction is dangerous. That desperation can make you do things you never thought possible. That society's trust can be exploited by someone clever enough. But he also proved something else, that your past doesn't have to define your future, that even the worst mistakes can lead to redemption if you're willing to change. Frank didn't just survive his crimes, he used them to help others. He turned his biggest failures into his greatest contribution. That's the real con, convincing the world that a criminal can become a hero. And Frank Abagnale pulled it off. If you want more stories about people who went from nothing to everything, legally or illegally, subscribe. Because next week, we're diving into the man who stole $65 billion from his own friends and called it investing. See you then.